It is Thanksgiving week, and you may have already watched my video Sunday where I prepared a huge Thanksgiving meal and shared all of my favorite recipes. If you haven't, I will link that in the description so you can check it out. But today I'm going to be putting all of my Thanksgiving leftovers to use, which I don't have that many leftovers because we had company and there just wasn't much left. But I do have to make a huge batch of turkey bone broth, and I've got some leftover turkey, so I'm going to show you one of my favorite recipes. I've got my nice big plate of Thanksgiving, well, not really Thanksgiving, but because I filmed this a couple weeks ago, but Thanksgiving meal leftovers here. And this is just one of my favorite things about the holidays is, there's always lots of good leftovers in the fridge. In fact, today I have, you can see behind me on the stove, my massive stock pot there that has turkey bone broth simmering that's been simmering overnight and into today. And I'm actually going to be canning that in this video. I have full tutorials on canning. This isn't like a full tutorial, but I am gonna just walk you through the process of pressure canning bone broth. And I'm also going to be using up the rest of my turkey that was left over, which I didn't have that much left over. So if you watched my video from Sunday where I prepared a huge Thanksgiving meal, which was just perfect because I got to make all of my classic favorite recipes and film it all in advance to share with you all before Thanksgiving, because that is what one of my children requested for a birthday meal. And we had a lot of people over yesterday for the birthday, so there really wasn't as much food left as I thought, but that's fine. That's why I made it, for people to eat it. So I've got just enough turkey to make one of my favorite leftover turkey dishes. So that's what I'm doing today. Making some bone broth, canning it, and making a leftover turkey dish, which I'll share the recipe with you all. Everything that you see on this plate, so the cheesy cream corn, which is always a hit. It's so simple, but anytime I make this and I bring it anywhere, people ask me for the recipe because they say something like, well, I don't like corn, or no one in my family likes corn, but we really like it this way. So it's simple, but it's very, very good. That recipe, my 1-pot mashed potatoes, my sweet potato casserole, my sourdough stuffing, and the turkey that I roasted in the oven with the injection recipe, it's all linked in the description from last week's video. So just check up in the corner of this video right now and you'll see something come up that's called a card, and I'll link the video with all of these recipes. But before I get started with all of that, I'm actually sitting here right now in a rare moment of peace and quiet. Feels like I'm doing something wrong. And I'm getting a head start on my Christmas lists. So by the time this video comes out, this will be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. When you're watching this, meaning Black Friday is in 2 days. I know people have really strong emotions around Black Friday. People either love it or they hate it. I'm probably somewhere in between. It's always been a really fun day because my mom, my sister, and I, and usually some ladies from our family just get together and we do go shopping, but none of us have a huge agenda. We're not the kind that are like beating down the doors trying to get deals. We just like to spend the day together. It's a really fun day to get up early, get a really good coffee, and eat some more good food. And actually, a couple years ago, I think actually for the last 2 years, we just went antiquing. We didn't even do the whole big box store thing. So I don't know exactly what is on the agenda for this year, but I have learned as a mom, especially as I have more children, that I like to get my Christmas shopping finished well in advance. I just don't like that last minute rush. I like to have everything wrapped and prepared. And I actually set my Christmas presents out under the tree before Christmas. And my kids love that. And part of that is because we don't do like the traditional American Santa Claus where we tell the kids that there is a real guy flying in the sky who's, omniscient and everything like that. We don't do that. We do Santa as in, Saint Nick. So it's a fun Christmas character, if you want to do the Santa version, but it's a real story if you want to tell the story of Saint Nick. So we do still participate and have fun. And, if we go somewhere and there's a Santa, the kids will sit on Santa's lap. It's not anything weird. Like, this is nothing weird in our family. My kids have grown up loving Christmas. They know where their gifts come from. They know their gifts come from John and I. And that has not taken away the excitement one bit. I'm not the kind to film my children's reactions on Christmas, but I remember being a kid, and I did grow up believing that there was a Santa flying in the sky who was real, and my kids are just as excited. Long story to explain why I like to have my Christmas shopping done. I don't like the rush, and I like to set my gifts out in advance, and that just adds another layer to the fun, because for a couple of weeks, the kids are, picking up the boxes, stacking them up, trying to guess what's inside, shaking them, seeing if they can figure it out. And it's just become a really fun family tradition. I'm going to take a little break here from the Black Friday Christmas shopping chat to show you my canning process. Canning bone broth, from a whole turkey carcass. So I have 2 giant pressure canners. For the first 5 years that I learned to pressure can, I used an old small pressure canner that my great aunt gave me, and I still have it, and it still works great. You need to get the gauges checked. You should get them checked technically like every year and make sure they're accurate. But my old one still works great, but like I said, it's small. So I did go ahead and splurge, maybe it was earlier this year or last year, on these 2 big ones, because I do a lot of canning. I've proven to myself that I will use them, and this cuts my canning time in half, because I can do double of more than double, because they're the big canners. All right, so I went ahead and filled my pressure canners with a few inches of water in the bottom, and I'm going to heat up that water. When you're canning, you want everything to stay hot. Now, here what I'm doing is I'm just scooping out as much of the big stuff, all the bones and skin and everything that I can get out of my big stock pot, so that I can start straining my broth. Got to save the wishbone there for the children. I have really, really in-depth tutorials on pressure canning and water bath canning. It was like some of the earliest first videos I made, and I talked way too much, so they're really, really long. But, they're really detailed. I did not leave out any steps, so I will link those in the description and in cards for you guys if you want to check those out. This probably isn't super detailed. I'm just showing you my process. I've had my clean jars heating up in my pressure canners, because remember, I filled them with a few inches of water, and then started heating that water, and I put my jars in there to heat them up, because you want everything to stay hot. My broth is hot. It just came off the stove. These jars are hot. Everything is hot, because it's, you're working with glass. When glass changes temperature quickly, it busts. Ask me how I know. I mean, everyone knows that, but then when you actually see it in practice when you're canning, it's such a bummer to lose a jar of whatever you're canning because it busts. So now I'm just, straining my broth really good to get all the little pieces of bone or whatever out, and I'm going to fill these half-gallon jars. So these are 2 quarts, half-gallon jars. I can fit 4 half-gallon jars in one of my big pressure canners. Now, I didn't have a bunch of these big half-gallon jars, so you'll see here, I only had 4. So I'll fill 4 of them, prepare them for canning, get them in there, and then I'll just have to use quart jars for the rest, and that's fine. But I do definitely want to keep my eye out for good deals on more half-gallon jars. As our family grows, I use more food, so it's unlikely that I would use just a quart of bone broth. I'm more likely to use more of that in any given recipe. All right, so I filled my jars with bone broth, left about an inch of headspace. That's the space between the top of the contents of the jar and the rim. Now I have a little bowl of vinegar. You can see at the bottom of your screen there, and I'm dipping a clean cloth in that vinegar and cleaning the rims. That way you get a really good seal. And look, you got lots of fat there that's already rising to the top in each jar. So now I added my lids and my rings. Gonna screw those on so they're nice and tight. I've got all 4 of my half-gallon jars
prepared. So that's hot broth in hot jars going into hot water. The water's not boiling yet in the canner, but it's hot. I have it on low, so it's hot. Everything stays hot. And once I get everything in here, I'll go ahead and put the lid on and fire up this canner. You want to make sure your lid is locked in place really well. These lids do lock and they don't come unlocked when there's pressure in there, so you're not going to hurt yourself. And then you see steam coming out of that canner that I just put the lid on and locked. That's because I'm venting the canner, so I haven't put the pressure regulator on. There's just steam like billowing out of the top. That's fine. You want to do that for like 10 minutes. And since those are half-gallon, they're bigger jars, they need to process longer. So that's good that I'm getting that started first. So while that first pressure canner is venting, then I'll go ahead and prepare my quart jars. So I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quart jars here, preparing them the same way, an inch headspace, clean the rims, place my lids, tighten my rings, and these are all hot as well. I had these nice and hot while I was working. So same process there. I just put all my jars in my canner, locked my lid. Now I am putting the pressure regulators on both of those. The half gallons will process for 35 minutes and the quarts for 25 minutes, both at 11 psi.
So I have been a mom for over 12 years now. I've kind of got the Christmas thing down as far as gifts. I did start out as like a minimalist Christmas mom. Each kid is only getting 2 or 3 gifts, but we kind of got away from that. We do not break the bank. We don't spend an arm and a leg. We don't go overboard to where the kids are tired of opening presents because there are so many, but we do more than 2 or 3. It's really fun. And I've got my go-to stocking stuffers. I get the same stocking stuffers every year, and they're really fun stuff. So I'm sitting here now, and I'm actually making out all my lists. I keep a note in my phone. It's a little template. So each kid has a space with a little checklist under it, and then each family member that I buy gifts for has a space. And that way when I'm out and about, or just anytime that something pops in my head, like a good gift idea, I put it in my phone because I know I'll forget it. And then that syncs to my computer, and then when I have time, I can sit down and look for deals and do my shopping. So right now, I am making out my lists, and I'm actually making Christmas idea lists on my Amazon storefront to share with you all. So I haven't decided if I'm going to separate these lists and make a few different lists, or if I'm just going to do one big Christmas list and try to keep things organized within it, but it will be on my Amazon storefront. I will link that in the description, and I'm going to have toddler gift ideas, kid gift ideas for bigger kids. I will have what I do for stocking stuffers, and also a mom gift idea list, things that I would like to get for Christmas. Now, some of this stuff, it's stuff that I already have. Some of it's stuff on my wish list, but I can tell you this, most husbands don't like having to guess. They like it a whole lot better if you just tell them like, hey, this is what I want. And now maybe you're the type of person that you have to be surprised. Like, you can't help people out as far as gift giving. You want it to be their idea. I'm just not that kind of person. I give my husband some hints. In fact, I usually just order my Christmas gift that I want, and I say, hey, you got me this. And he's grateful that I do that. Then he doesn't have to worry about it. I know I get what I want, and I act surprised on Christmas morning. So yes, that is me lying to my children. Hopefully this is an acceptable lie. Now, I'm not sure if I will put together a list for dads, for husbands. I mean, I've done some pretty good gifts in the past. One year we got John a huge, really nice smoker. And I like to get him stuff like that because I will benefit from that too. In fact, today he is actually smoking baby back ribs. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, well, I'm going to finish my lists. I'm gonna finish eating this delicious plate of food, and then we will get to it with a couple of things that I'm gonna do today to wrap up all of my Thanksgiving leftovers.
Now, when your processing time is up, you do not want to remove the pressure regulator. See, mine are still on my lids. Let the canners depressurize with the regulator on. Yes, it takes time, but that's part of the canning process. That's part of the processing time. So just don't do it. Don't rush your depressurization. So I let these depressurize, and it was so nice out today. I actually, after I was, chatting with you guys about Black Friday and Christmas, I went outside and spent some time outside with my family. Came in, did the bone broth. My husband had smoked ribs, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. So we'll get to the turkey leftovers tomorrow. But right now, I'm just taking all of these jars out, and I'm going to leave them right there, not touch them at all, and let them cool overnight. You want to let your jars set for at least like 8 hours, but I just let them sit overnight. So then in the morning, I removed all of the rings. You want to store your jars without the rings. That way you can make sure, that the lids are sealed. If you have a bad seal, you'll notice. Whereas if your ring is in place, you might not notice. I did rinse off my jars because I have hard water, and I forgot to put vinegar in my canner. Somebody gave me that trick. That way you don't have buildup on your jars, but I just forgot to do it. I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of tea now. This is my prenatal tea. So I don't do a prenatal vitamin, but I do this tea, and I do a mix of supplements. Let's see, where do I have this all saved? I'll just go ahead and link everything in the description, but I know maybe on Instagram I have a highlight called supplements or something where I have, I talk about this, what I do for prenatal nutrition. So this is a blend that I made in this big jar. I blended together 4 herbs: nettle, oat straw, red raspberry, and alfalfa. It's called Nora tea. Just Google that. Google Nora tea. It's pretty amazing stuff. Highly nutritive, great for mom and baby. If you're consistent with it, it really reduces your odds of postpartum hemorrhage, helps you heal after birth. It's just amazing stuff. So I don't buy this pre-blended. Like I said, I buy my herbs in bulk and then I blend them myself. And I make a big gallon of this, which I drink a quart a day. So then, this will sit, it's in the morning right now. So I'm making, it's really an infusion rather than brewing tea that I'm making. I'm going to let that set on my counter for 8 hours, and then I'll strain it out tonight and it'll be ready to go. So I just put a Dutch oven in the oven because I'm preheating it. I've got some sourdough I need to bake. I'm going to get breakfast ready. Good old-fashioned sourdough pancakes. You all know I do a lot of that around here. It's a go-to. The kids always love it. Doing my custom topping orders here. So you can see that my tea has not been sitting that long, but it's already getting a nice rich color. I will say it does not taste, I don't mind the taste because I'm used to it. I've been drinking it for such a long time. But people say it doesn't taste good. So, if you want to sweeten it up or add lemon or whatever, you can do that. That's just fine. You don't have to drink it plain. But I do drink a quart a day, like I said. Now, drinking red raspberry leaf tea early in pregnancy is controversial because some people claim that it can cause miscarriage. I've just researched it enough to where it's not a concern of mine, but if it's a concern of yours, then don't do it. That is a choice we all have. We don't have to do things. We can do whatever we want. So I'm comfortable with it. With my first 2 pregnancies, I just did everything the doctor said. I took the prenatal that they prescribed, that, they would send it into the pharmacy. I'd go pick it up and it was free under my insurance. I did everything they said. I followed the doctor's orders. And those pregnancies were very difficult. My first one was born at 34 weeks, spent a few weeks in the NICU. My second one, I did progesterone injections and still was barely able to stay pregnant until 38 weeks. It was just, like I said, it was very difficult, and I couldn't figure out, I don't have any medical conditions. What's wrong with me? So with my third one, I just decided to take ownership of my nutrition, and I did so much research into prenatal care and prenatal health, and I went my own way. I broke up with my high-risk OB, went with a midwife, did everything my own way, ditched the conventional prenatals, and I carried him to 41 weeks in one day and had a beautiful unmedicated birth with no complications, and my fourth was just the same. So, I'm pretty biased when it comes to really doing your own research and making your own healthcare decisions rather than just kind of blindly following doctor's orders, because I'm putting my sourdough in. What you saw me just do is I dropped some ice cubes around the parchment paper. That prevents the bottom from getting scorched. I've talked about that before. So I bake my sourdough at 425. That works for the altitude I'm at in, my particular oven. I bake it covered for 30 to 35 minutes. I uncover it and bake it for another 10 minutes, and it's good to go. So another big, beautiful loaf here. Gonna let this cool until at least this evening. You want to let your artisan loaves cool. If you cut into them too early, they lose moisture, and the loaf will just be gummy and dry and not good. So we're gonna set that to the side. But just to finish that thought, here in the United States, we have such amazing technology and, access to healthcare that people who have children with really rare conditions actually come here to have them treated, and that's wonderful. It's amazing that we have those resources, but that begs the question, why do we have the highest maternal mortality rate in all developed nations in the world? That's unacceptable. If we have all this technology and the ability to care for people this way, why are mothers dying most often here as opposed to other countries? Why are babies having poor outcomes here? I've found the answers to those things, but if you haven't, just look into that, because those are really important questions. And of course, it's anecdotal, but I have my own experience of 2 pregnancies following strict doctor's orders, and it was very difficult. I had the typical American kind of like horror story experience where it's traumatizing. And then 2 going, well, now I'm on my 3rd going my own way, and it's just been wonderful. It's been amazing. All right, let's do something with this leftover turkey. So you just saw me chop up all the staples that we do for, all these like one pot meals: some carrots, some celery, some onion, and some garlic. I'm going to get that going in a Dutch oven with some butter. Going to reduce that down. And while I do, I'm going to mix up some biscuit dough. I've done this biscuit dough a lot for you guys. I've showed you how to use it different ways. This is my brown butter cast iron biscuits. I'll link it in the description. It is on my blog, but you can just make regular biscuits. You can modify it to be a sourdough discard recipe. You can make biscuit cinnamon rolls with it, and I'm going to show you another use for it today. So you can see that I'm just letting my veggies continue to simmer over there in the Dutch oven, and grating up some butter for this biscuit dough. Grating is far superior to cubing and cutting in with a fork. Just saying. So I'm adding an egg, adding some store-bought milk there. Incredibly painful. We'll never make the mistake of doing this breeding situation again, but we shall survive. Gonna mix this up, not too much, because you don't want your butter to start to melt. And I'm just gonna stick this biscuit dough in the fridge to chill. I am not going to shape it because I'm making turkey and dumplings. So, not chicken and dumplings, but turkey and dumplings. I love anything in dumplings. It's one of my favorite, warm fall / winter time meals, and it's so easy to make. Like I said, I just use this biscuit dough, and I do drop dumplings. So you'll see, I'll show you how I do it. But this is how much leftover turkey I have, and that is not a lot. I made a huge 20-pound turkey. If you watched my video that came out Sunday, then you saw that. But we had lots of guests, and luckily everyone was very hungry. So this is just enough for this one meal. So I'm going to add this turkey in with the veggies that I have had simmering down, and going to season very well. I'm going to use the same seasonings that I used when I cooked the turkey and when I injected it. So I've got rosemary, sage, thyme, I believe here, and then I'll add in some garlic powder, some onion powder. And yes, I already put garlic and onion in this dish, but some things, more is more, right? Garlic and onion, like you just can't have too much. I go through lots of seasonings, which is why I have these pint jars that I just fill up. I buy my seasonings in bulk whenever I can. So I'm going to salt this pretty generously. This exact recipe will be in the description. Now, rather than adding flour right now, I'm going to use my leftover turkey gravy and just add the remaining turkey bone broth that I didn't can. So, the recipe will be a little bit different in the description, but if you have leftover gravy, start with that. Because, when you're making any kind of soup or sauce or gravy, um, you start with a roux. It's butter and flour, and then your liquid, whether that is milk or it's bone broth or whatever, that's what you start with. That's your base, and that's basically gravy. So I put that gravy in, put bone broth in. Now I grated up some white cheddar cheese, and I'm gonna let all of this just simmer down for a little bit. Obviously, I edit this video, so it did simmer for about 15 minutes. But now I am dropping in my biscuit dough dumplings. You can make them big, you can make them small, depending on what size pot you have. If you're making this in a big stock pot, then you could make them small and just drop them in. I'm doing big dumplings, so that is just what I'm doing today. Then I'm gonna cover this Dutch oven, keep it on low, and give it maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour until the dumplings are cooked through, and it will be ready to go. It will need to set up before we eat those. So I'm going to go ahead and strain my tea that I made this morning, just getting out the bulk herbs there. I'm going to pour this into my quart jars through some cheesecloth because you don't want to catch little pieces of dried herbs when you're drinking your tea. That's nasty. So 3 of these quarts I'll go ahead and store in the fridge. 1 I'm going to drink tonight. And I do sometimes add a little maple syrup and lemon or just lemon or whatever, but I can drink it plain too.
We had some guests stop by to visit right before we got ready to eat, so I didn't get to finish filming last night. I didn't get to let my turkey and dumplings really set up and thicken up nicely to show you last night, but that's okay because I'm never gonna turn guests away so I can film a YouTube video. I mean, that's what life is all about. And I'm so glad that we always have people here stopping by and knowing that we always have food. But anyway, I made a lot. I made that huge Dutch oven, so we had a lot left over. So it's lunchtime next day, and I just heated some up. And you can see that it is nice and thick and cheesy and delicious. And the biscuit dough just works so perfectly for dumplings. It cooks really well. So I'm just such a big fan of having staple recipes that can serve many purposes. So you have seen me use this same biscuit dough to make cinnamon rolls. Now dumplings, I make kind of like faux pot pie where I will shape it into biscuits and then, you know, just like put it on top of pot pie filling and bake it like that. There's just so much you can do with it. Very, very versatile. All right, well, this was delicious. Recipe is in the description. I'm going to get off of here and go eat lunch with my children. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week.